my name's Emma Varnum. I'm a crochet designer and author, and I am popping on here to give you some hints and tips about some of the techniques used in some of my patterns. If you would like to subscribe to this channel, please press the bell icon and also follow the blog on emmavarnum.co.uk. I'm really happy to have you here, and please share with your friends if they would like hints and tips on crochet, and also please go to the blog to look at future patterns that are coming through. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Stargazer blanket, which has been, look at really popular, and that is available as a pattern download. It's really easy to do this pattern if you can do a granny square, but what I would say is that some people find doing the half and half granny square slightly more difficult. So what I've decided to do is do a little tutorial on how I do 2 halves of a granny square. So here we are. We're going to work the second half, the second triangle as part of the half and half square. I'm using a contrasting yarn, and I'm just going to show you where you go in to start off each row. Let's do a slip stitch to start with. That'll help it not unravel. And we'll go in to the top of row 1. I'm going to do 2 chain stitches, and then I'm going to work 3 trebles into the center, almost the foundation chains. Okay, and then I'm going to work 3 chains, and then I'm going to work 3 more trebles. I'm doing this quite quickly because the aim of this is to show you where to go in when you work your half square. I'm then going to do 1 chain, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch into the top of row 1 from the previous triangle, and I'm going to do 2 chains, and I'm going to attach this here to the top of row 2 with a half treble stitch. Okay, there you go. I'm going to turn the work over now. I'm now going to work, this is your first treble, I'm going to work as the second treble into that chain space, and now I'm going to work across the top of, oh, I missed, see what happens. I'm going to work across the top, oh fiddle, of the trebles. Here we go. And now I'm going to work 2 trebles into the 3 chain space. I'm going to do 3, 1, 2, 3 chains, and I'm going to work a further 2 trebles into that same chain space. Now work along the top. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to work 2 trebles into the very first chain space I made. I'm going to work 1 chain, and I'm going to then make a slip stitch into the top of row 2 from the first triangle. I'm going to do 2 chains, and now I'm going to attach my yarn to the top of row 3 with a half treble. You're getting the idea. That's one chain. We're going to go in there when we've turned over. I'm going to turn over the work, and I'm going to put my second stitch, these 2 chains, the first stitch, in here into this chain space. Now, some people work half and half granny squares, changing the yarn and working with 2 yarns at the same time. That's, you know, there are lots of different techniques. They're all good. This is just how I do mine. 1, 2, 3, working 2 trebles, 2 further trebles into that chain space, and now working along the top. I'm using, for the Stargazer blanket, Stylecraft Bambino and Bellissimo yarn, which I really like, and it washes well, and it's a great blanket yarn. I'm going to do 2 trebles into this chain space, and as before I'm going to work 1 chain, which you're going to fasten off. It's the top of row 3 from the first triangle. As before, 2 chains, and then a half treble stitch to attach to the top of the next row from the previous triangle. As before, we turn over. Those 2 chains, standing chains, act as the first stitch of the next row. We're going to go with a second treble into that chain space, and now work along the top. The Stargazer blanket can be worked in what I think 3 different sizes. You could just use 1 star motif for a baby blanket with a nice deep border edging. I think you could work a lovely lap blanket. It would be a square, using just 4 of the motifs, and use up your remainder yarn to do a lovely rainbow edging. And the final blanket that I made, which is quite a large blanket, it's good on a British UK king size bed. That has 9 star motifs. And here I am taking you along row 4 of this 5-row granny square. Now, in the pattern, there are stitch diagrams. They go up to row 3 because you get the idea of the stitch pattern from the 3 rows that I've had drawn. And so, but this actual motif works up to 5 rows. I'm going to do 2 trebles in the chain space. We're now going to do 1 chain. We're going to slip stitch into the top of row 4, the bottom of row 5. You're going to do 2 chains, which are the sort of standing first stitch of the next row, and then you're going to do your last half treble stitch, and then you're going to turn your work over, and you're now going to work our last row. By working the colours separately in triangles, you are able to get a clarity of colour, because if you work the other technique, you'll run your yarn along the back of each, well, through each stitch, and it gives a great mild effect, but sometimes you can see one of the other colours, little tangle there. I'm just working quite quickly here. As you know, we're just trebling along, but I want you to get the idea of how the pattern works. We're doing 2 trebles. Let's try and undo that tangle. There. 3 chain. And then 2 trebles. This is the last half of the last row. I would always suggest blocking your granny squares if you can. You don't need anything particularly sophisticated or shishi to block your granny squares, but if you pin damp granny squares which you've sprayed with a mister, or you've rinsed quickly and wrung out, and you pin them out on an ironing board or a towel, that's as good as having a blocking board. 1, 2, the last 2 stitches, 1 chain, and that's, well, here we are going into the very top of the last row, and there we are. So here you are, there is your half and half granny square. It will really benefit from some blocking, and it's a lovely, lovely pattern with clarity of colour. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that little tutorial. Please do subscribe or click the bell icon and we'll tell you when new clips come up, and really enjoy your crochet.